Hello YouTube, this is Frugal back with the second PMDG 737NGX flight series. This is a three-part video once again. Now you remember in the previous video that we actually flew London Gatwick to Amsterdam following PMDG's own tutorial flight number 1. In this one, this three-part series, we're going to be looking at tutorial flight number 2, heavily modified again because of the software that I'm using. How do I get to my seat here? How does one get to one's seat? Stand on that and jump over? I don't know. I'll tell you what. Let's cheat. That works. Yeah, because of the software I'm using, it's going to be quite heavily modified. Now, in this first part, we're going to be setting up the aircraft again, just like in the first part of the previous video. The difference is, because I'm following tutorial number 2 from PMDG, there is a fairly extensive set of steps we're going to go through to calculate the actual fuel that you would need to fly a route. So, worth paying attention to if you have no idea how to calculate fuel for a trip. Once again, PMDG 737NGX flying the 737-800 with winglets. Before the questions come in, this is FSX, not prepared 3D. I am using EasyDock cameras to actually fly around the cockpit and do all this sexy stuff like this. That's EasyDock camera add-on, and I'm using FS to crew so that I have a co-pilot, which makes it a lot more realistic than manually flicking all the switches over that side of the cockpit on your own, which doesn't make any sense at all. So without further ado, let's fire up FS to crew, get the first officer doing what he should do, and then I can keep telling you the good stuff. So I'm just going to lock this FS to crew add-on right up here, mute my microphone so FS to crew doesn't get all concerned, and we will tell him to go about his business. Here we go. Grate on me a little bit. So I'm just waiting for him to finish. You will hear things power up like the APU. You'll hear air conditioning come online in a second, which says that he is good to go. Come on now. Incidentally, let me show you the outside of the aircraft, which I can do now. As always, stunning aircraft. If you haven't bought it and you like the heavies, well worth checking out. So my first officer now is just going through pre-flight electrical startup. Once he's finished doing that, you'll see it change up here. Once he's finished doing that, I can go and set up the navigation computer. And the CDU, which is going to be the bulk of this video. Again, it's going to be a little bit, it maybe seems a little bit dull. It's not. If you're really into flying the 737NGX, you want to do things accurately. PMDG have built in a full fuel management simulation into this, so you can actually accurately figure out the fuel needed for a route from the CDU itself, which is kind of cool. I think it's cool. It makes for a much more realistic flight because the aircraft is the correct weight and you went through all the steps that a real pilot would have had to go through to do this himself. My goodness, come on, Mr. First Officer. You notice I'm using a European crew because we're in Europe. Beforehand, I think I was using an English or American crew. I mean, English crew, I'm sure, actually. The American crew just grate on me a little bit. So I'm just waiting for him to finish. You will hear things power up like the APU. You'll hear air conditioning come online in a second, which says that he is good to go. Come on now. Incidentally, let me show you the outside of the aircraft, which I can do now because I have all that set up. There it is. 737-800 with winglets. They're loading cargo right now. You can see the door open down there. Such a beautiful aircraft. Incredible level of detail. Oh, mind your head. You see all the cargo doors are open. That's where the luggage is going to go. We're not going to worry about that. We're going to be a little bit busy. Using just the standard livery. I do have all the liveries installed, but not messing with them for this. Okay, sounds like he's got the APU online. About damn time.
Perfect.
No air stairs. Incredible level of detail. Oh, mind your head.
Let's
in the cockpit, and we'll go through all of our good stuff. So, heads down. Oh no, before we go any further, let's set up the nav system up here. Both these switches need to go to nav. There we are. We're going to need that in a second for synchronizing our current position. So here we are on the ident page. We're going to go to Posinet. Right here. We are at EHAM. So I've got to be careful how I type this in because I don't want to conflict with the keys that I have set up for EasyDock cameras. So we're at EHAM, Amsterdam. Good to go right there. So we're going to go to the next page, POSREF. We're going to copy the GPS position now everything's synchronized, go back to the previous page, load that in here. The aircraft now knows where it is, which is very, very awesome. Okay, let's go to the route page now and we can start messing with this route. Now we are going to fly to Innsbruck, which is L-O-W-I. Whoops, no we're not. We're actually going to start at Amsterdam. Already the first mistake. Alright, from there, and we're going to fly to Innsbruck, up here. This is flight number Frugal 738. We are all good there. Let's go to departure arrivals now. And we're going to press 1 left for our departure. We're not using air traffic control. We're not using weather either. This is the PMDG tutorial flight, as I said. They simplify things so you can focus on just one thing, which in this case is going to be that horrendous landing at Innsbruck and the CDU setup that we're doing right now. So we're going to fly from runway 24, which is that one. And we are going to take off via the Lima Uniform November India 1 Sierra SID. Like so. Let's go back to our route page right now. Go to the next page for route page 2. And now we can set up the main route. Now you remember in the previous video we had to set up the vias and the twos. There's actually a shortcut. If you have a decent route that you got from Route Finder online or something like that, you can just key in the vias. It will connect the dots for you, which is pretty damn awesome. So our first via is going to be, oops, wrong key, UZ738 up here. And you'll see now, I don't actually enter the 2, so I'm just going to continue entering the vias. So, Uniform Zebra, or Zulu, 741 is the next one. And then the rest of them. So, Uniform Lima 603. Obviously, I have the route from the tutorial that I'm reading. You could get this from a route planner online. 729 is next. Need to go to the next page because we ran out of space. Tango 104 is next. Uniform Mike 867 is the next one. Zulu Zebra 107. I don't want to keep saying Zulu. Too much armor. Put that in there. And Mike 736 in there. Now our last one, we actually do need to enter the 2, so we're going to go from Mike 736 to Tango Uniform Lima Sierra India. And that's why I didn't want to press too many keys, because it changes my views. There. All good so far. Now we go back to departures and arrivals screen. We're going to go for our arrival now. Because we're not using air traffic control, we know exactly what we're going to do. That's the star that we need to connect to the Tulsi waypoint that we just put in. So we'll connect that one up. We are going to be landing via Lima Zebra 26 approach, which is the scary one. And transitioning via Rattenberg, RTT. All good there.
I'm out for the walk around.
See ya. Let's go to the legs button now. Just fix some of the stuff in here. So, we have a max speed 220 restriction. Not a mandatory 220 requirement on this second point here. So we're going to type that in as 220B/. Put that in there. And on the next page, over here, well, not next page, page 5 of 9, this soft requirement, we're going to make a hard requirement because of the altitude restrictions at Innsbruck. 9500 is a hard requirement in there. We're all done on the route. There was quite a lot to do, but the CDU and the PMDG 737 helps you do most of it yourself. So we can activate this route, activate, and execute. All good and lovely. Let's go back to init ref now. Zero fuel weight ZFW. We can enter that using the shortcut, so just click it once. It will figure it out for you. It will dump it in for us right there. We're going to put in a reserve of 5,000 pounds of fuel. We'll change that later when we actually do the proper fuel calculations. We're going to have a D-rated takeoff, so cost index of 36, which is a higher thing than last time, flying at flight level 390, which we'll put up here. And we're not using wind or weather. So, whoop, and I pressed the wrong key again. We'll put that up there as course and wind. Like so. And our transition altitude, our EHAM transition altitude is 3,000 feet. Which we will put in right about there. Again, execute that. Now notice it's telling us we're using reserve fuel. That's because we haven't calculated the actual fuel we're going to use. That's what we're going to be doing right now. I will show you 2 ways of doing it, according to what PMD tell us are the 2 ways of doing it. The 2 ways of doing it are, if we go to Prague, you can see it's a 457 nautical mile trip. We currently have 9,600 pounds of fuel on board. Landing at Innsbruck, we will have 3,200 pounds of fuel. Simple enough. So, the way of calculating, the very, very quick way of calculating it is actually to add 2,200 pounds of fuel per 100 nautical miles. So that's 4.5 basically multiplied by 2,200, which would give us 9,900 pounds of fuel. Very, very simple. We then add around 5,500 pounds of fuel for reserve, giving us a grand total of 15,400 pounds of fuel. That's the lazy way of doing it. We're going to do the much more complicated way of doing it, which is where I am going to screw up horrendously. So looking at the fourth and fifth lines here, 457 nautical miles, ending with 3,200 pounds of fuel. Simple enough. If we subtract this from this, that's giving us 6,400 pounds of fuel for our base trip. What that's telling us is that flying from here direct or following these waypoints, including time in flaps and gear down and all that kind of stuff, is going to require 6,400 pounds of fuel. Now we know that when we get to Innsbruck, we're going to be in the gear down and flaps down condition for 5 minutes longer than normal. That normally requires us to burn 132 pounds of fuel per minute more. So 5 multiplied by 132 gives us an extra 660 pounds of fuel that we need to add to the 6,400 pounds of fuel for the base trip. Simple enough. That gives us, we should probably account for go around as well. The standard amount to add for a go around is 286 pounds of fuel. So 6,400 pounds of fuel plus 660 pounds of fuel to account for the extra time in flaps and gear down plus 286 pounds of fuel for the go around gives us a grand total of 7,346 pounds of fuel for the main flight. Legal requirement is we have to add 5% just to account for things like ATC vectoring, being assigned non-optimal altitudes. So that is an additional 367 pounds of fuel on top. We also need to account for taxi. The standard figures used on almost every flight. According to PMDG, I'm actually reading this now, are 30 minutes of APU time, 10 minutes taxi time, 2 engine burn as well. That in total is going to give us 390 pounds of taxi fuel. Again, a standard number. Okay, now, because we're flying the Lockheed approach, Lockheed East approach at Innsbruck, it's fairly horrendous. We will be breaking off the normal route and circling around to land on runway 8 rather than 26. And so we need to add, say, 1,000 pounds extra fuel to account for that circling approach. We also need to probably add in some extra contingency, extra fuel to account for more go-arounds because it's such a horrendous landing procedure. So we're going to double up what we did before, say 573 pounds extra to account for the possibility of extra go-arounds. Now there is also there's also a possibility that we'll be put on a hold because of weather. I know we're not using weather, but I'm trying to do this accurately. Holding uses 84 pounds of fuel per minute. So let's assume 30 minutes of hold time, 84 pounds of fuel, 30 minutes hold time gives us 2,520 pounds of fuel for the hold. So our total fuel in total is trip 7,346 plus contingency 367 plus taxi 390 plus the extra, which is our hold time. Our extra go around fuel is 4,093, giving us a grand total of 12,196 pounds of fuel. The problem is, if we're going to do this accurately, we also need to add a diversion, an alternate. So let's go and do that. We are going to go right now back to the init ref page. We are going to press the index button right here, and we're going to go to alternate destination up here. Our alternate for this flight is Munich, which is...
May we start the
just one second. Yes. Great, welcome. Okay. Our alternate is going to be Munich, which is EDDM. We're going to put that up here. It's telling us direct to Munich is 358 miles. Well, that's wrong. That's direct from here. What we wanted to calculate is a alternate, a diversion from Innsbruck to Munich. The way we do that, select that line, and then we change this from direct to missed approach, just by clicking on this. That's a lot better. Okay, we need to increase the altitude here. The highest mountain in the area around Innsbruck is 12,500 feet. We need to clear that by at least 1,500 feet. So our altitude, if we're executing a miss or diversion to the alternate, is going to be flight level 140, which we're going to put up here. Again, no weather, 360/0 on the weather. There. So far, so good. This is where it gets very quite scary. it says that the fuel requirement for this is going to be 2,100 pounds of fuel. So to divert from Innsbruck to Munich would require 2,100 pounds of fuel. If we go look at the prog page here, and I think it's on a prog page here, fuel for the trip, the ending fuel we have in the tanks is 3,200 pounds of fuel in the tanks at the end of it. So 3,200 minus 2,200 gives us, let's say, 1,000 pounds of extra fuel. It's actually 900, but we're rounding up. 1,000 pounds of extra fuel. There is a 5% contingency requirement on that as well, which is an extra 50 pounds of fuel. Again, we need to assume that we be put in a hold. So that hold figure we had earlier, 30 minutes of hold, gives us 2,520 pounds of fuel. So our total alternate diversion route fuel is 1,000 pounds of fuel for the diversion, 50 pounds of fuel for the contingency, 2,520 pounds of fuel for the hold, giving us a grand total of 3,570 pounds of fuel. If we add that 3,570 to our previous fuel calculation, 12,196, we have a grand total fuel requirement of 15,766 pounds of fuel, which we will round up to 15,800 pounds of fuel. Wow. Hopefully you followed all that. I tried to annotate it on the video as well, so it would be a little bit less confusing. You might want to re-watch that if you're calculating it yourself. All we need to do now is enter that in. So on the Captain CDU here, we're going to go to Menu, FS Actions, Fuel, and again, 15,800 pounds of fuel. Done and loaded. Let's press init ref now. Get back to the perfect init page. We can start modifying things here. We know that our true reserves figure now is actually 3.6, 3,600 pounds of fuel. So we go into that. 3.6. There. That's the actual reserves that we need for that diversion. Now, the issue we have here is if ever we see on the CDU here using reserve fuel, we are legally required to divert to Munich. We're cutting into the fuel that we need to actually fly to Munich. If we're on reserves, we need to be heading there, not Innsbruck.
30.
Bear that in mind.
20.
Okay.
10.
With all that done, at this point, if you were very, very professional, you'd be firing up a tool like TopCat and finding out your takeoff values and engine values and stuff. We're not doing that. We're just following the tutorial for this. So, let's go to the N1 limit page. We are going to have a derated takeoff. Derated 2 here. We're going to assume an outside air temperature of 5, which will derate the engines further. Let's go to the next page here. Now, we have a fairly complicated takeoff procedure from Amsterdam. Oh, those crazy Dutch. The procedure requires us to climb at V2 plus 20, reduce thrust to climb setting at 1,500 feet, and then continue at V2 plus 20 until 3,000 feet. After 3,000 we can accelerate normally and retract our flaps. We can actually do that using the CDU and set up the aircraft to do all of this for us fairly easily. So, going to have 3,000 field, 3,000 is our acceleration height. Let me go to the next page. Why isn't this not working? Oh, I'm sorry. Take off. Next page. Acceleration height here is 1,500. We don't need to change the reduction altitude. That is normal. Our engine out acceleration height is 1,000 feet. 1,000 feet is our engine out acceleration height. We'll put that in right there. All runways in FSX have a zero slope, so we don't need to put in anything crazy there. Again, we are not using weather. 360/0 for the wind and the weather. So far so good. Let's go back to the previous page. Lost the setup, right? We're going to be using flaps 1 for this takeoff. Right in here. Our center of gravity is calculated for us, which is fabulous. Here we are, and now I'll calculate our V speeds. V1 is 144, VR is 145, V2 is 147. So far so good. Now let's go on to the DES button. Where is that? Right here. DES forecast page, right here. And flight level 040, which is the transition altitude here at Amsterdam if we need to come back. So we'll put that in right there. And we are pretty much done. So now we can run through the rest of the setup of this aircraft. Where am I in my notes? Okay, so we've done all that. We've set up the CDU. We can do a little master lights test. I actually don't bother with stuff. I don't have failures turned on. So it's not a huge deal. But for the sake of argument, let's do it right now. Come on. There we go. We're in a test. All the warning lights should be lit up everywhere. Which they are. So we know that works. I'm going to turn that off now. What's next? we're going to set up the EFIS control panel. So we want this on barometric right over here. We are going to be using the VORs and have those displayed on the DVUs down here. So I'm just going to turn those on VOR1, VOR2. Need to set up our minimums. Now, to save me panning around the cockpit, you can just click on these displays and pop them open, which I'm going to do. My minimum is going to be 900 and I've forgotten how many feet. Let's say 980 feet because of the runway being less than sea level. So start spinning this around here. Come on now. 980 feet. Clicky, clicky, clicky.
I am ready for the checklist.
I don't care that you're ready for the checklist. I'm very busy. It's going to take a while. Oh my goodness. Wish there was a way of just typing that in. You know, I could even put in 1,000 feet. It doesn't really matter. I think it's actually 983. That's what we're going to leave it as right there. I will close this window. What else do I need to set up here? Just the minimums. I'm good. Okay. Flight director is on. Copilot already did that. Not going to worry about that too much. Oxygen test. Just scroll down here. Click on the test button. Make sure we see that, which we did. Nosewheel steering switch guard is closed. We are good there. Initial data and navigation steps, we just did that. Standby altimeter has already been set by our trusty first officer. Altimeter is 1013 because we're not using real weather or anything like that. We've set up the standby RMIs. Speed brake, because I accidentally pressed the speed brake button, didn't I? Let's go and fix that. Thank you. Let's set up our radios before we go any further. We're going to need them. Lots to do in this flight. Okay, nav 1. We want nav 1 tuned to Schiphol. So that would be 108.4. There. Like so. Nav 2, we're going to set to the Pampas VOR, which is 117.8. Like so. Nav 1 standby, we're going to set to Amsterdam runway 27. Again, just in case something goes horribly wrong and we need to return. That is 111.55. There's the 55. I kind of hate working with these knobs. Nav 2 standby, we're going to set to Amsterdam runway 18 center. Again, just in case we have to return. And we don't know if we do have to return which runway they're going to stick us on. That would be 109.5. Like so, that's standby, everything is good. I'm missing, I want the transponder actually set to 332. Again, whoops. There we go. Transponder set to 332, and as in the previous flight, we are going to set our, sorry, not transponder, ADF, what am I saying? We're going to set our transponder up to 2200, just like in the previous flight to signify IFR. We're good. I'm going to set up the HGS now. The runway we are going to is 11,329 feet long. So, 11329. Hit that runway button. It has a zero altitude, so we're all good there. Enter. We are all set. Okay, now we can finish doing all the setup and working with our first officer, who will very much enjoy our company, I'm sure. Okay, turn the mic on. Pre-flight checklist.
Oxygen.
Checked.
Instrument transfer and
Checked.
display switches. Window heat.
Checked.
Pressurization mode selector.
Auto.
Flight instruments.
Heading 003. Altimeters 1013.
Hello, Captain. The passenger boarding is complete. And when you're ready, I have the load sheet for you.
Awkward. Thank you.
Heading 003. Altimeters 1013. Parking brake.
Have a safe flight.
Set.
Engine start levers.
Idle. Oh, checked. Checked.
Pre-flight checklist complete.
Alright, so now we can move on to the start procedure on all those good checklists. Change over my notes here. I'm actually referring to the actual checklist here and the FS to crew flows. So, before start procedure... Okay, so we can't actually do before start procedure because the doors have not been closed. But what I can do is set up the autopilot and all that good stuff, which is what I'm going to do. What is up with my views here? I'm bouncing around all over the place. Okay, again, I'm going to pop open this view because I need it, and we can run through setting up all this good stuff here. So let's go to our init ref, N1 limit, takeoff. Okay. Speed is going to be 147. That would be V2. Like so.
V1.
I'm actually waiting for my before start procedure. In fact, you know what? I probably should. I've actually missed a step. I have screwed up. I should go back. And we probably should do. Yeah, we should do the departure briefing. Let me get that out of the way while I'm continuing with this stuff right now. So, back up onto the briefing panel here. Play briefing.
Are you ready for the departure brief?
I'm ready for the brief.
Okay, we have no MEL issues today. I will be the pilot flying. This will be a standard takeoff, using noise abatement departure procedure 1. The departure will be an ATC assigned SID. We will use flaps 5 for takeoff. Runway condition is dry. As for anti-ice, it's not required. Engine bleeds will be on. Okay, for the takeoff safety brief. Up to 100 knots for any malfunction I'll call reject, confirm auto brakes are operating, and if not operating I will apply max, manual braking and maximmetric reverse thrust. Come to a full stop on the runway, and after full stop on the runway we make a decision on further action. From 100 knots to V1 I will only reject for 3 reasons: engine failure, engine fire, or takeoff configuration warning horn. At or above V1 continue into the air, and the only actions below 400 are for you to silence the bells and confirm failures. Above 400 I'll call for failure action drills as required, and you will perform memory items. At 800 feet AFA I will call for alt hold and retract flaps on schedule. 1500 feet I will call for the checklist. If above max landing weight we will make a decision to perform an overweight landing as the situation requires. For wheel well, engine, wing fire, I will turn the aircraft in such a way the flames will be downwind side and we will evac via the upwind side. For cargo fire, ensure the emergency services do not open the cargo doors until evac is complete. Any questions?
No questions.
Departure brief complete.
Okay, now we're back on track. We've done the departure brief. Cabin crew are going mental. Now we can do the before start procedure, so let's get that underway, and then I'm back on track as to where I should be.
We also request that you review the safety instruction in your seat.
Before start procedure.
If you're seated in an exit seat, also
I'm showing it all right
of
here.
course.
It looks like one of the doors is still open.
Okay, so while he was doing all that, I actually set up all the MCP, all the autopilot stuff right here. So I've set up my course is 106, his course is 225. That's tracking your VORs and making sure that everything is on track once we get into the air. Lots of double checks right now on this flight. I set up the initial speed 147. Our heading from the takeoff reference page is 239. Just go to takeoff reference page, go to the second page, you'll see runway heading is 239. And I have set up the trim, which is 5.03 according to the weight that we have. That was calculated for us by the aircraft. So at this point now, we are pretty much just waiting for the cabin crew to get their act together. And we'll be good to go. I haven't loaded passengers and stuff. That was already done prior to starting this flight. I can arm LNAV and VNAV now, and this is a good double check. If I've set everything up on the flight computer properly, both will turn green, like so. So that's all set up and we're good to go. We're now just waiting for the cabin crew to finish their procedure. They'll come into the cockpit and tell us they're good, and then we can do before start procedure, I hope. Haven't missed anything. Trim is set for takeoff. Yep, we're all good. We're actually way ahead. I expected us to be behind at this point, so I'm kind of surprised at that. Let's look at this route here. Pretty scary route, right? So actually taking off that way and then turning straight away. I could change the range on this. Let me see if I can do that while we're waiting for the cabin crew to figure out what they're supposed to be doing. There we go. What a hideous departure that is. And then it's pretty much a straight line all the way into Austria before we land at Innsbruck. Come on, cabin crew. I've set up my HGS already. Incidentally, with the HGS, you can clear this for taxi. If you go down to the HGS control here, this button right here, it's very hard to see from this distance. Let me zoom in. Whoops. Let me grab the mouse and zoom in properly. Bit of a graphical glitch there. Okay, the far left button is clear. So if you wanted to turn that off and not be confused for the taxi, just go down to the HGS display here, click that far left button, You can clear the display, which is kind of cool. I'm actually going to leave that cleared, and I'm actually going to get rid of it. We'll pop it down next in the next video. What is this cabin crew doing? I heard them finish their announcements. Exit closed. Here we go. Lots of alarm bells. They're removing the air stairs that we already saw aren't really there, which is very strange. Come on, girlie. Just double check everything here. 225 on his side, 6,000 is the altitude, heading 239, speed 147, my side 106. We are on barometric up here. We have the standby indicators both onto VOR1 and VOR2. We are in map mode. Our range is pretty good on the map.
Okay, Captain. Cabin is ready to
At
go.
last. God, take your time, won't you? Thank you.
If you need anything, just let me know.
Before start procedure.
Check.
So he's going to run through his stuff now that I already did. It's a shame with FS the crew that you can't do things a little out of sequence. Like, he could have done most of this stuff already. I'm sure there's probably a legal reason why you can't do before start procedure while passengers are still getting on board. To the 737 pilots that watch this, I apologize if that's the case. Alright, he's ready for the checklist. Before start checklist.
Flight deck door.
Checked.
Fuel.
I'm not going to read the quantity. Checked. Checked.
Passenger signs.
Checked.
Windows.
Checked.
MCP.
V2 147. V2 147. Heading 239. Altitude 6,000.
Takeoff speeds.
V1 144. VR 145. V2 147.
CDU pre-flight.
Completed.
Rudder and aileron
Checked.
trim. Taxi and takeoff briefing.
Completed.
Anti-collision light.
Checked.
Before start checklist complete.
Okay, so with that done, we can start the pushback now. Let's just warn the cabin crew to arm slides.
Cabin crew, arm slides.
And we will go speak to the people on the ground. Cockpit to ground.
Go ahead.
We are ready for pushback and the main engine start.
Okay, all doors and hatches are closed. Pin has been inserted. Please release brakes.
Brakes released.
Roger that. Pushing back, and you're clear to start our engine.
Start sequence is 2, then 1.
Check.
Start engine 2.
Check our battery load, amps. I'll be starting up the APUs here shortly. Seatbelt sign on. Window heat on. Wing anti-ice, engine anti-ice. Cut back off. Pumps, A and B system on and off.
TCAS system test okay.
The voice recorder checked. Temperature down a little bit here.
Now we wait for him to tell us
Looking
that
at
the
our
ignition's
altitude.
engaged and we're good. Bit of a bug here in that our taxi position out, our gate position is too bad, so we're actually going to be pushed back over the glass, which is kind of odd. Love that sound. Start engine 1.
Start.
Off the truck.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this Please direct your attention to the cabin crew for the safety information. First, there is an instruction card in your seat pocket that illustrates the safety equipment on board of this aircraft. Regulations require compliance with this information as well as all license seatbelt by inserting the metal tip into the bucket. Tighten the seatbelt by pulling on the belt. To release your seatbelt, lift the metal flap on the bucket. It is our policy that you keep your seatbelt fastened at all times when you seat. Doors are clearly marked with exit signs once you stop. Each door is equipped with an escape sign. Locate the nearest exit to you and note that the nearest exit may be behind you. In an emergency, lights will illuminate the aisle. The cabin is pressurized. If there is a loss of cabin pressure, a panel will open and the oxygen masks will. In such case, remain seated with your seatbelt.
Clear.
Before taxi checklist complete.
Clear on the left.
Clear on the right.
Alright, let's go speak to radar control, radar contact. Taxiway, which I normally do. Whoops. Gave a little bit too much gas there, auto throttle disarm. Which is another quirk actually of this configuration of the 737. You need to be very careful with that throttle. Let me turn off the mic here. Speed should be 142.
Approaching 1-4.
That's the problem with recording and speaking. Alright.
We have it in sight now, in 2.5.
Okay, could you keep it in sight for the takeoff?
Enough computers recording stuff right now. I wanted to keep it fairly simple.
Clear takeoff, runway 12, the wind is 140 degrees, 19 knots, maximum 26. Report established, radio 342, Sierra Delta Golf.
Clear for takeoff, 12, report established, radio 342, Sierra Delta Golf, and we keep traffic in sight, in 2.5.
Okay.
I actually can't turn on to AM. There isn't a turn to do so, but I can turn here. And then we'll pick up taxiing towards the hold in a little while.
Departure 12 and left turn to radial 342, Sierra Delta Golf, 5,000 feet, 118.
Yeah, while we're busy doing this, let's go speak to the first officer. Before takeoff checklist. Laps 5, green light. Set.
Before takeoff checklist complete.
Alright, so that's him. Shut up for a bit.
Cabin crew and take your seats.
Hence the bloody great jet in front of me.
Roger, speed room 2540.
Clear for takeoff, 12, report established, radio 242, Sierra Delta Golf, and we keep the traffic in sight, in 2.5.
A little bit off the taxiway there.
Pretty good.
255, ready to taxi.
I don't want to be directly behind this guy. I'm looking for my holding point. Runway entry procedure.
Check.
342 Sierra Delta Golf, climb initially 5,000 feet, KNH 1018.
Departure 12 and left turn to radial
Ready to go.
42 Sierra Delta Golf, 5,000 feet, 118.
Approaching 1-4.
We have it in sight now, in 2.5.
Oops.
Could you keep it in sight for the takeoff?
Radar contact screwed up a little bit there, I think. Shouldn't be sitting immediately behind a big ass jet on the runway, but okay. First time I've seen that happen. Get rolling here, going to enable FS to crew, and off we go. So bear with me while I stop talking to you and start talking to the plane.
Right, 738, cleared for takeoff, runway 36 right, departing straight out, approved. Cleared for takeoff, runway 36 right, 738.
Take off.
Check.
Alright, so the autopilot is now engaged and I can get back to talking to you. So, yeah, in this flight we're going to be focusing really on the FMC, reprogramming your route, doing the sort of stuff that you would normally do with this aircraft in response to air traffic control. So if you're flying with VATSIM or somebody like that, online air traffic control, some of this stuff's going to be very useful. In fact, if you just want to really nerd out, I mean, come on, we'll play flight sims, we're nerds, right? If you really just want to nerd out and pretend certain things and reprogram the FMC in response, then you can. Some of this stuff's going to be very useful for dealing with weather as well. We've got to watch this speed here before we get to the flaps up speed. So there's the town that we're trying to be quiet for. All these people here, and obviously over here. There's our route going. First turn, 20 up on 3000, which is where we will speed up.
Transition altitude. Altimeter is 1013.
Checked. So you can see the nose pitching down right now to pick up a bit more speed. We'll be approaching the flaps up speed now. Flaps up.
Flaps up.
So he's doing all his stuff now. We'll get ready for the after takeoff checklist.
I'm ready for this checklist.
After takeoff checklist.
Engine bleeds on. Max. Auto. Landing gear. On and off. Flaps. On. No lights. After takeoff checklist.
Alright, so now we're going to be climbing up to 6,000, and what we would normally be doing at this point is waiting for clearance to start climbing up to our main flight level, which is 390. Again, we're going to simulate that, and just to cover the format of these videos here, I'm still learning the 737 NGX. It's not an aircraft that I would normally fly, so it's been a challenge for me, also juggling time and life and all that kind of stuff, to really dive in here. So I'm actually following PMDG's 737 NGX tutorial flight number 2, which is very, very complicated. I've modified it quite a lot as well, just to make it more complicated, because I'm using FS to crew. So this is the PMDG 737 NGX, obviously in Microsoft FSX, with FS to crew handling all my voice commands and everything else. There we go, we're at 6,000 feet. Now, also I'm using Easy.Camera, which is how I can do all the floaty, smooth, move around the cockpit stuff like this that you guys can't if you don't own Easy.Camera. I do get a lot of questions about that actually, and how to configure it, so I will be doing a video explaining how to configure Easy.Camera. It's a very, very cool tool, but very confusing. The UI sucks. Now, I did notice the other day, practicing this flight, that even if you're using Track IR, which I have as well, it's sometimes hard to bounce between down there and up there, looking at changing the FMC and checking what you're doing on the ND up here and so on and so on. You can actually click on these things and pop them out. Oops. And then once you pop them out, you can lock them in place and have them on the screen pretty much permanently, which is a very cool feature. It doesn't really detract from the immersion of the sim, I think. So let's bring that up. Let's bring the FMC up as well. There it is. Good, so now they're up. Move that out the way a little bit. And I will change the range on our view. Okay, so at IV LUT, or India, what is that? India Victor Lima Uniform Tango. Well, just before we get there, we're going to presume that we've got clearance and we're going to start climbing up to a flight level 230. I want to show you some of the things that does. In the previous flight to Amsterdam, you saw me use altitude intervene on the MCP up here to actually set an altitude and climb to it. I want to show you what that does down here as well, to the legs. Now, currently we have an altitude restriction of 6,000 feet at that waypoint. Let's say that we get ATC clearance early and we can climb early. If I do the altitude intervene, this actually goes in and recalculates all the altitudes at the various waypoints based on what we just did, which is really pretty awesome. So let me go ahead and do that. Set flight level 230. So he's now dialing up a new flight level down here. Going to wait for him to finish that, and I'll get him to press the altitude intervene button, because it's all the way over there and I can't be bothered to reach. I'm being facetious, of course. It's actually his job as the first officer. Select altitude intervene. That didn't work. Select altitude intervene.
Altitude intervene.
There you go. You see it cleared out that 6,000 restriction straight away, and it recalculated the altitude at each of the waypoints, which is an important thing to know. Now, because we did the altitude intervene, we're currently in VNAV speed, where the autopilot is controlling our speed throughout this climb. What this means is if we change the altitude again, prior to reaching the set altitude, which would put us into VNAV alt, if we change the altitude again, we'll just keep climbing up to that new altitude. We don't need to do the altitude intervene or anything like that, which we're going to do in a little while, but not right now. So, let me change the range up on this and see exactly where we are at. Okay, quite a way to go. I'm going to start messing with the flight plan round about here at MISCO. Show you some of the neat things you can do round about there. So I'll probably cut the video in a little bit so you don't have to sit through the boring stuff. But I'll talk you through some of the things. I gotta say, first of all, my appreciation for this has grown considerably. As I said, I think in the first video, I'm not really into the heavies and the jets. I don't like flying a computer. Well, that's what I thought. I was kind of intrigued by the challenge of learning how to fly one of these, which is how I got into it. And I've been very pleasantly surprised. I've done this flight now a few times. I've done the manual landing in Innsbruck. It's a hellish landing in Innsbruck. I've done that manually a few times. And the more I do it, the more enamored with this aircraft I get. There is so much detail in this. And to be honest, so much work that you need to do in maintaining the computer and everything, you know, setting up the waypoints in your legs and managing all that stuff on the autopilot on a very complex approach like Innsbruck takes a huge amount of time. It's a wonderful challenge, really, really good fun. So I really have changed my opinion of this quite a lot. Let me just check on my checklist right here and see that I haven't missed anything in terms of FS to crew, because he can get out of sync very, very quickly. No, I think we're good. Alright, so I'm going to cut it right about here, and when we get back we will be just before the MISCO waypoint. See you in a bit. Back. Okay, we're coming up on MISCO right now, so we can really start playing with the FMC and reprogramming our route on the fly, as it were. This is sort of stuff that you would be doing in response to ATC calls normally. So if you're flying online with VATSIM, they might be asking you to do some of the stuff that the PMDG tutorial is talking you through, and I'm going to show you how to do it. Alternately, some of these things would apply really if there's weather problems and all that kind of stuff. So it really just demonstrates the level of depth that PMDG have built into this aircraft. It really is quite phenomenal. So the first thing I'm actually going to do, I'm doing it a little bit early, but I don't really care. In fact, no, I will wait. In fact, while we're waiting, let's just get a little quick drink up here, as is now tradition on my videos. One juice, please.
Okay, I'll be out there in a moment.
Thank you. Alright, so she'll bring me a nice little drink of juice so my throat doesn't dry out. Still got quite a way to go to our top of climb. We're at 30,000 feet, climbing flight level 390. Quite a way to go yet. Long flight. Very long flight. And we're really going to start messing with the route once we pass this waypoint here. Where's my drink? Should have ordered coffee. She might have to open a carton for the orange, and then she's got to put ice and pour it out. It's a bit of a pain.
Hello, gentlemen. Here are your drinks.
Thank you.
Anytime.
Isn't she nice? She's so helpful. Anyway, I'm getting distracted. Alright, we're coming up on that waypoint now. How far to go? 3.8 miles. So we're going to start the turn. Once we level out of this turn, I'll show you the stuff. Turn, we will be heading towards Gulf Mike Hotel, which is, what, 40 miles away from here? And what we're going to do is simulate getting an ATC call that clears us direct to Tesca. So typically if you're on VATSIM, you might get somebody on the radio who says something along the lines of Frugal 738 cleared direct when able to Tango Echo Sierra Golf Alpha. And then you reply, great, thank you very much. So now you need to change your route. Here's how we do that. It's actually very much like programming the route on the ground. Select the waypoint you want to go to just by clicking it. That copies it down the bottom here, bottom line. Then all you need to do is click on where you want that leg to go. So we want that leg to replace that route, sorry, that waypoint, my goodness, to replace Gulf Mike Hotel up here. So we just click on it. And it's showing me, okay, if I do that, this is what's going to happen. You see this? Dash line telling me you're going to skip this, you're going to turn right and go that way. All you need to do now is just click execute. See the route changed over here? Previous waypoint went away, the line changed, now we're heading direct that way. Very cool, very simple. That was one of the things that worried me about this aircraft, is having all these systems to manage. How tricky would it be if I'm online with VATSIM and they start giving me weird orders like that one? There's a bunch of other stuff you can do as well. These are somewhat rarer situations dealing with ATC, but they can happen. And again, I just geek out a little bit about how in-depth the FMC simulation is in this. Let's say that you get an along track waypoint. Now what that means is it's a waypoint that is named but with a distance. So let's say ATC says, yeah, turn right or go direct to Bombay at Tesca 20 miles before Tesca. This is how you would do it. Select Tesca once again here. That copies it down here, and then just type in what you want. So we put a slash, and we want it to be 20 miles before. So minus sign 20. Line select that back up over the waypoint that we're heading to, and it moves. You see that? It's added in a new waypoint. Sorry, it doesn't move it. It's added in a brand new waypoint for us. We could then actually go and delete Tesca and put Bombay in its place, which would be kind of cool. You could do that like this and like this. There you go. So now I've created a new waypoint, and I've said when I get to that waypoint, go direct to Bombay, which is kind of cool. I don't want to do that. You can back out of any of these things, so you're free on a long flight like this to really mess around and experiment, which is very awesome. Just click erase, and it puts everything back. Let me move on to my notes and bring up the next change that we're going to do. I think it's weather-based. Bear with me. Oh no, place bearing distance. What we just did was a long track. Place bearing distance is very similar. It's you might get a call to fly to 270 degrees from Tesca at 20 miles out. That's very easy to do as well. Click on Tesca, or the waypoint in question. Type in the heading, or the bearing from it, I should say, 270. What distance along that bearing, so 20 miles. So what we're doing here is creating a waypoint that is bearing 270 from Tesca, 20 miles away from it. Watch this. How cool is that? We got a disconnect. We would need to change the disconnect by putting basically Tesca there. Now we've got rid of the disconnect, put in a new waypoint, but a waypoint based on bearing and distance from another waypoint. Which, if you think about the math involved in that, and the fact that this sim right now is managing everything else, like drawing the world outside, managing the aerodynamics, simulating the aircraft as a whole, that's pretty cool. I really like that. Alright, what's the next thing we can do? Bearing. This is kind of an intersect bearing. So let's say we got a call from ATC telling us to fly to 270 degrees from Tesca, where it intercepts 300 degrees from Bombay. Sounds horrendous, right? It's actually very easy. Select Tesca, type in 270 degrees from Tesca, and put the slash in, 300 degrees from Bombay. So wrong one, B-O-M-B-I, and then we put in 300. Watch this. How cool is that? That's 300 degrees from Bombay, or 300 degrees to Bombay, or from Bombay, I'm sorry, and 270 from Tesca. Very, very cool. Again, a discontinuity in the route. Just select and clear. Very, very simple. Let's get rid of that. The next one is really weather avoidance. So if you've got the weather radar up and it tells you there's a nasty storm coming up, you can put in something called an offset. This is a little bit more complicated, but still not so hard as to be something you would never do in a flight. What we do is we go back to the NetRef page, click on index, and then click on offset. Now you need to tell it whether you're going to offset left or right. So we're going to offset our course left 10 miles. So we put in left L 10. Put that in here. Look at that. The whole route shifted to the left. Now maybe we don't want the whole route shifting left. We actually just want part of the route. Well, the way we get around that is to simply put in start and end waypoints. So let's say we just want to shift left at Tesca and come back on course at, what is that, Harran? Let's do that. So start is Tesca. There we go. So we're on course up to Tesca, then we start shifting left, and we want to come back on course at Harran. H-A-R-E-N. No, I must have spelled it wrong. It's not harem, surely. Harem. I guess it is. Let's try that again. Put an M on the end. It's hard to read. It's very small. My goodness, there's a waypoint called harem. So now we've shifted left on this part of the course. So maybe there's a large storm right here. We're just going to fly around the storm. Again, very, very, very easy to do. Oops, cabin
our
crew.
meal service. You can find the meal and beverage choices in the menu given to you when you are boarding. Please keep the aisle clear so we can serve you more efficiently and also for your own flight safety. Thank you very much.
Alright, now it's shut up. If you go back to the legs page here, it now shows you there's an offset in place, and it tells you the offset is right here, which is kind of cool, and obviously you can see it over here. Let's get rid of that. The other thing you can do is put in CDU fixes, or just fixes on the map, which are very, very nice, especially for something like the Innsbruck approach that we're doing, where it's absolutely imperative that we're very well aware, looking at this screen, of where we are at all times. All we do for that is press the CDU fix button, which is there, type in where you want to fix on, so Tesca, it could be any waypoint or VOR, we'll put in Tesca, and now you specify the kind of fix that you want. So let's say we wanted a 270 degree from Tesca, 270 degree radial. Look at that, there's the 270 degree radial now from Tesca, which is kind of cool. Now let's put in /20 for 20 miles and put that into line 3. Now it's drawing a 20-mile circle around Tesca and the 270 radial. So if you were told intercept the 270 radial, then hold 20 miles from Tesca, it's very easy to do and to visualize now, which is pretty neat. Okay, now the next thing we can do is even tell us to give us a fix, which is a beam to a radial. So let's pick up a VOR. Let's pick up Tau, which is very close. It's around here somewhere. We'll put that one in, and now we can just say a beam. And it shows us we will be a beam that VOR at this point in the route, which is pretty damn cool. If we wanted to now, we could actually put that into as a waypoint as well. Not going to. I'm actually going to go back to the legs page and clear everything up, which we've done. And we're all set. Kind of rushed through that, and like I said, I'm still learning this aircraft, so a lot of this is very new to me as well, but I hope that gives you some idea of the things you can do with the FMC. It's very cool. There's so much variety you can put in here in changing a route dynamically, getting fixes on screen, being more aware of where you are in the world, particularly for complex approaches like the one that we're going to be flying in the next part of this video. Which brings me on to the next part of this video. In the final part of this second flight, it will be the ILS LOC DME approach to runway 8 at Innsbruck, which is the manual circling approach, trying to avoid nearby mountains. Hope you got something out of this video. Please leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and if you're not a subscriber, subscribe. This channel is all about sims, everything to do with sims, mainly flight sims, also race sims. Once again, my name is Frugal. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you for the landing.
Le cœur d'une ville inconnue se livre au hasard de ses rues. J'étais l'étranger venu là pour un soir, et soudain j'ai croisé un regard. Ce n'était rien, rien qu'un passant qui m'a souri sur mon chemin comme un ami. Je ne sais pas pourquoi je garde encore l'image de ce visage plein de chaleur. Perdu dans la foule tranquille, je suis resté là immobile.
Meine Damen und Herren, im Namen Ihrer heutigen Lufthansa-Crew möchten wir Sie bitten, sich mit den
Immobile, il s'est retourné un instant et de loin j'ai pu voir s'agiter rudement. Ce n'était rien, rien qu'un adieu ou un bonjour donné de loin sur mon chemin. Mais tous les mots n'auraient pu m'en dire davantage que ce visage plein de chaleur. Ami lointain, je ne sais rien, ni de ta vie, ni de ton nom, mais j'ai gardé ton souvenir qui chante encore dans ma mémoire, et la chaleur de ton regard.
Hello YouTube, this is Frugal and welcome back to our third and final part of the flight in the PMDG 737 NGX from Amsterdam to Innsbruck. Now, I got to correct a mistake. I have said in the previous two videos we're flying the ILS LOC DME approach. It's not ILS. There's no ILS involved in this. This is the LOC DME approach, the runway 8 at Innsbruck. I just want to clear that up. Now, as I have said in the other two videos, I just want to throw it out there once again. This is PMDG's tutorial flight. When you buy the PMDG 737 NGX, it comes with two tutorial flights. This is the second one, and I have been using it to learn how to fly this aircraft, and you guys have been kind of following along because I've been recording everything I do. I can say with some certainty that after completing this flight, if you try it yourself, and this landing that we're about to do, there is not much that you can't do with that 737 from PMDG. It's the most comprehensive tutorial I've ever seen, because this landing and approach is perhaps the single most challenging and dangerous approaches in the whole of Europe. I've actually flown this approach a number of times as a passenger, I think 3 times flying into Innsbruck, because Innsbruck serves most of the major ski resorts in Austria. So if you're going skiing, now think about this for a second, winter, ski weather, cloud, shitty winds. Right, if you're going skiing, you're flying this approach. Let's talk through this approach. We're going to turn up in the area. This is the area. There's Innsbruck right there. We're going to turn up here at Rattenberg, and we're going to be, as you can see on the chart here, 9,500 feet above the ground. Kinda. Let's put that a different way. We're going to be 9,500 feet above sea level. We're actually only about 1,000 feet above the ground. Here. See these mountains? Those, my dear friends, are the Austrian Alps, and we're going to be skimming the tops of them as we start the approach, and then when we get into the approach, we're going to be pretty much flying right through the middle of them. This is the edge, sorry, this is the ground underneath us, but you got to bear in mind that right here, if you can think of this in 3D, right here on both sides is mountain. If you fly this as a passenger on a 737, you can look out the windows and you can't see sky anymore. You see rocks flying past the window. It's terrifying. So we're going to hit this at 9,500 feet. We are going to then turn 210 degrees, as you can see on this chart, and we're going to fly that heading until we intercept an offset localizer DME actually, called OEV, which is right on the runway right here. There's the localizer beam right there. Once we hit that, we're going to turn and fly it like a glide slope to land. Okay, it's not a glide slope to land, it's an offset localizer, but we treat it pretty much like we're going to land. So it is a glide slope we have to follow, and you can see that glide slope right here. The DME part comes in a number of phases of this flight. We're starting off at 9,500 feet up, 16 miles out from OEV. We're descending to 8,561, at 14 miles out, 7,700, at 10 miles out, we are 6,000 feet above sea level, and so on and so on. So it's a pretty steep descent. Because it's a steep descent, I mean, you actually fly this descent, I think, at about 4 degrees, yeah, 3.8, 4 degrees down. There is a risk of overspeed. Not sure why. It's probably off the edge of the map, so I'm not even going to scroll around. Oh, there it is. What am I saying? There it is. There's Absam. So we hit that thing, we're going to turn 210 down here until we hit that one. Then we're going to turn 264, and we are now downwind. Notice at this point on this downwind leg, minimum altitude. Absolute minimum altitude of 3,700 feet, which we will be reaching that minimum. You will have terrain warnings, terrain, pull up, going off in the cockpit all the time, because at this point, as you can see, we are flying over a slope of another mountain. So it's higher here, lower here, we're flying that way, we're flying right along the sloping edge of that mountain at only about 300 feet above the ground. It's crazy. Once we get to exactly 3.5 miles from OEV, here on that 264 course. At this point, which seems like the worst point in the world to do it, but trust me, it's the right point, we will disable autopilot auto throttle, VNAV, LNAV, and manually fly the rest of the approach. The rest of the approach is a very steep descending right-hand turn around here to line us up on runway 8. I suspect we will get it wrong and we will end up about here, which means we'll need to come back and correct to land. It's very steep, it's very challenging, and I can tell you, some of the flights you do this, particularly when there's bad weather in the real world, my God, with full flaps, gear down, spoilers out, engines are screaming, that plane sounds like it's groaning in pain. It's really not pleasant, but it's very quick. From about here to here is about 1 minute. It's crazy. It is the most intense minute of a pilot's life. So that's what we're going to be doing, and that's why we have fixes. Fixes for OEV, fix for Innsbruck, fix for Absam, and probably 1 or 2 other fixes as well. Let's get in the cockpit and try this out. Okay, here we are in the cockpit. We're about 40 miles out from the top of the descent. I'm going to be doing things a little earlier than normal because I really have to concentrate on talking through everything with you guys as well as actually doing it. Now the first thing we need to do is set up a speed restriction at 18 miles out from Oscar Echo Victor on the approach. We're going to be 15 degrees of flaps and gear down at that point, so we need to figure out what the actual speed restriction needs to be, and we can use the FMC and the CDU to do that for us. What we're going to do here is, first of all, calculate our weight at landing. Sorry, calculate our speed. We need to look at our weight at landing. So if I go to the front page right here, our weight at landing is 8,400 pounds. Our zero fuel weight is 122,600 pounds, which gives us a total weight of 131,000 pounds. So if we go to a net ref here, and we put in a total weight there of 131,000 pounds, the approach reference, it will recalculate all the speeds. So our speed with 15 degrees of flaps and gear down is VREF. Sorry, I'm reading my notes. It's VREF 40 plus 20, so it's this 134 plus 20, so about 154. Let's say 155, and it matches up to the notes that I'm looking at on the page right here. So here's what we're going to do. We go back over to the next page. We find that waypoint, OEV 18, and we're going to put in that speed restriction. So 155 slash, and we put on the right hand side. We now have a speed restriction at that waypoint, which is exactly what we want. We're going to hit the next page to go back to the first page of our route. Okay, with that all done, we can start running through everything else. Now, you're going to have to bear with me a little bit. I am referring to a ton of notes. I guess the first thing I really want to do is, let's bring the first officer. The top of the descent is right about here.
Edmonton Center, Japan 42. Edmonton Center, Japan 42, 132, position. Container 42, stand by, please. Container 42, I'm going in. Japan 42, check flight course at 2217, flight 310, estimating depart at 0035. Japan 42, roger, report of beam, Fort Nelson, or crossing 120 west on this frequency.
I actually set up that brief long, and it comes to 40, so I might screw up through a little bit, not a problem. Let's run the descent checklist. We're about to start on this descent. We're going to run through this stuff first. Now in a second when we start descending, the autopilot will drop us down at 3,000 feet per minute, which can be unnerving for the passengers. So we're going to override that and descend at 1,000 feet per minute until we intercept the descent path, and then the autopilot take over that point. It's a little bit better for the passengers that way. Descent checklist.
Pressurization. Landing altitude 195 feet. Recall. Check. Autobreak. Level 2. Landing data. VREF 1. 2, minimums 2, 0, feet, approach briefing completed, descent checklist complete.
Now I heard some stuff there which was going to get screwed up as well by our kind of off-the-wall descent. Not a problem. Okay, let's go ahead and do what let's set up everything to descend a little bit smoother than the autopilot's going to do it. So I'm going to use him to help me on this. Set altitude 9,500. There he goes, rolling the altitude down. And what we're going to do is about 5 miles before the top of descent, here's top of descent rolling in right now, we're going to automatically, we're going to start a manual descent basically, but without using the autopilot but manual. You know what I mean, it's not going to be completely flight plan controlled. The way we do that is go down here, click on the desk page, you have a desk now button.
Altitude 9,500. 500.
If you click that and then execute, it will start the descent early. Just going to wait a little while here. Now my distance... let's go back to the legs page here. Hang on a second. Alright, we're 15 miles. So we're going to do it about 10 miles time, maybe a little earlier. Let's look at that route again. Yeah, we're actually going to do it a bit earlier than that. So when this is about 7 or 8 miles, we'll start the descent. Now I'm using track IR right now, obviously, because of the landing. At Innsbruck was going to be kind of tricky. I need to go to look around. So somebody was asking me on the channel comments whether you can use EZ.camera and track IR. Absolutely, there's track IR right there. I still have my view set up, but it lets me do things like set a view up for these screens and then glance down with my head to look at the CDU and the FMC. Very close now. Maybe that's just starting now. It's not a big deal. We'll just be descending slower than normal until we intercept that normal descent path, and then the autopilot will really take over. Let's do it now. So descent now, execute. Going to move my physical throttles back, so that when we finally do get to Innsbruck, there's not a conflict between where my throttles are when we come out of autopilot. You can see the Austrian Alps in the distance there. Getting closer. Let me reset track IR a second. So excuse the bounciness if the camera starts bouncing. Okay, next thing we need to do is start setting everything up for this approach. So let's go to that init-ref page on the CDU. Down here. We need to set in our landing weight, which is going to be 131. As we did earlier. We're going to set the 40 flap speed there. That's all set now. Going to go to the destination page now. Going to go to the forecast page of destination and put in our transition level, which is flight level 1, 2, 0. Put that up the top right there. Now this is because Innsbruck transition level is actually 11,000 feet. We're going to add 1,000 to that because of the terrain and everything else. Now we need to set our minimums up. Minimums are going to be 3,700 feet, which is from the charts that you saw on the introduction here. So I'm going to pop this open. It's going to take a little while to do this. Come on now. Ooh, that went horribly wrong. Let's wait a second. Wait a second, Frugal. Reading that completely wrong. So 3,700 feet minimums. That's again where I just heard the approach briefing went wrong. It was like minimums was 200. That's not the case. There's a huge amount to get done in a relatively short period of time. It looks like those mountains are a very long way away. They're not. We're landing in about 30 minutes. Now I've done this landing a couple of times now. It's gone pretty well. But if you see a cut at some point in what's coming up, then you know it didn't go too well and I have to cut it and redo it again. A little bit of behind the scenes tips there. Come on, now it takes forever to roll this up. 3,500, we want 3,700. There it is. Alright, let's start setting up the radios. We want to basically dial in the radios now to OEV, OEJ, and various things along there. So the OEV localizer frequency, the OEJ localizer frequency, and also the Rattenberg ND. Gonna use FS to Crew to do a lot of this stuff. It's a lot of clicking and typing. It's much easier if you get him to do it. So, if I can get this right. Set 110.10 on nav1. Set 109.70 on standby nav1. Set 109.70 on nav2. set 111.10 on standby nav 2. So we basically have both of those fixes on actives and on standbys, and we're all good. Now I need to set up the NDB here, which is going to be 303. Whoops, I actually hate using this thing. 30. Wrong. And it's tricky for me to use because I have easy.com. We're not going to make that active just yet. Let's set up the HGS. We want this to be in VMC mode for our landing. VMC priority. We're good. I'm not going to bother setting up the runway link. We are all set. Let's go back up to the EFIS panel now. Some stuff on here, like turn on these. That's all on. We need to put on terrain mode on the radar. We're all set there. Now we need to go down and program out a bunch of fixes, as I indicated we would, on the CDU. So here's the CDU. There's a bunch of these. It's basically everything that you saw in that intro I did to this. You can get it all from the charts if you go and look at the charts yourself. So AB is the first fix. We need to choose the right one. There's a lot of ABs in the database, so it's that top one for Innsbruck. And we want to be 230-degree radial from AB. Set. Let's go to the next page. Now we want the Innsbruck beacon. Let's put that in there. Again, Innsbruck, not Manchester. And 264-degree radial from there. Next page, OEV, Oscar Echo Victor. Make sure we're choosing the right one. Innsbruck once again. And we want to have a measurement which is 3.5 miles away from that for our turning point. Alright, I'm going to stop talking to you guys and focus on this landing. Now, Oscar Echo Juliet is the next one. Again, make sure we choose the right one, which is actually the second one in this case. We want the 247-degree radial from this. And we want 065. There, that's simple. Next page. So the Rattenberg one now, RTT. Come on now. There it is. We don't need anything special, we just want a marker. So we have the ABSAM AB NDB with a 230-degree radial. We have the Innsbruck NDB with a 264-degree radial. We've got the OEV localizer with a 3.5 nautical mile ring. We have the OEJ localizer with a 247-degree and 65-degree radial. And we have the Rattenberg NDB. We're all set. Let's put it back on the legs page. Okay, now we need to set up courses on the MCP. Again, I'm going to use FS to prove for this. Getting very close now. Set course on my side 254. Now obviously that's the course for the Oscar Echo Victor localizer. And we're going to set his one up as 067, which is the Oscar Echo Juliet localizer.
Course 254 set.
Set course on your side 067. Set. We've already run the descent checklist. In the notes, PMDG note, the descent checklist comes right about now. We did that a little early. As I said, I have a lot of things to worry about. Alright, now we just wait for 10,000 feet and the approach checklist. And then all hell breaks loose. So now we can just actually kind of relax a little bit. We're looking for the Rattenberg RTT VOR. Obviously you can't see a damn thing right now. Let's fix that. What am I doing? I have track IR installed. Let's turn track IR back on. I turned it off there while I was doing other stuff. So we just roll this down a little bit. A little bit more. Now obviously Easy.camera is moving the view around quite a lot. Even without weather on, it's quite bumpy right now. We are descending towards the mountains. Okay, so we got quite a way to go right now. Looking good. Now, as I covered in the introduction, we're going to hit the Rattenberg NGX at 9,700 feet, and then start turning and running the whole approach. It's going to get very, very quick and rapid at that point. Once I hit, or just before I hit OEV 18 miles away from OEV, we're going to lower the MCP altitude to 3,700 feet, which is the absolute bare minimum because of the mountains and the mountainous terrain. That's normally the point at which things get out of sync between me and FS the crew. I hope that's not the case. Right, and then we're looking for the 6.3 DME from ABSAT, at which point we're going to turn to heading 230. And then once we get to the Innsbruck NDB at 3,700 feet, we are going to turn right onto 264, which is our downwind. It's very exciting. Just checking my notes here again, which is an old screwed up. Which I think they are. We'll manage. Cracking in the voice there. First time I did this view that's coming up right now, it's really quite terrifying. You're basically flying directly at the mountains, which is pretty damn scary. So 18,000 feet, 18,500 feet now, waiting for the 10,000 feet. We're waiting for the transition altitude, which one we do the altimeter read back, and then the 10,000 feet clock. We're going to do the approach checklist, and hopefully things go very, very well. Although my frame rate's gone through the floor because of Fraps running, and a ton of other apps like my checklists, the voice recorder program, you won't have the problems I'm having. There's Tulsi right there. So here we go, there's the decel point. There's Tulsi. Drag is going to be required, yes we know. I'm not too worried about drag right now. Once we get to Rattenberg and we start really getting down, I will arm the spree brakes. At that point, we can start putting in some drag. Oh, got hiccups. Turning now to get us in a good position to turn back towards the Rattenberg NDB. See, it's all good this side of it. It's all scary that side of it. Yeah, if you look at the map right now on the ND, we're flying forwards pretty much, and then turning right. So the runway's over there somewhere. Very bumpy view. Our speed is transition level nice and high, and we're descending like a brick. Altimeter is 1013.
Altimeters 1013.
You can see the holding pattern that we would be put into if we were put into a hold at this point. We're not using ATC, so that is not going to happen. Waiting now for 10,000 feet, which one will run the next checklist. Speed is coming down, as it should. We are actually quite high on the speed. It needs to be 250 or less. Under 10,000 feet. We are actually quite high on the speed. So I'm going to help it out right now. The track IR back on. Whoops. And we got more speed brake. So I'm going to help it out right now. The track IR back on. Whoops. Ideally for the final part of this, we're going to be about 5 mile range. Currently we're at 10. Ideally for the final part of this, we're going to be about 5 mile range. Currently we're at 10. Right, let's click on the NDB that we programmed in. There it is.
Flight level 100.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will be arriving at our destination shortly. If you are making a connection with another flight, please contact our
Cabin crew, prepare for landing.
meeting this flight or watch the video monitors inside.
Approach checklist.
For connecting a gate.
Altimeters 1013.
Lieutenants will now walk through the cabin to secure it for landing.
Set.
We will collect and
Approach checklist complete.
newspapers and any other items you wish to discard or may not be taken off the aircraft with you. You are also requested to turn off all electronic devices. Stow these devices with your hand luggage.
So now our next key is going to be right about here, OEV 18, that's where we're going to lower the altitude. You will see that we're passing over a very high lump of rock at that point. We need to be very careful on the timing of dialing in that next altitude change. I'm actually going to pop that view up now so I can keep my eyes up here.
Shortly. Thank you for your cooperation.
My frame rate just went through the floor. Coming from the flaps. Settings now, let's go first stage. Flaps 1.
Cabin crew, take your seats.
There's the lump of rock that we need to be avoiding. Can't obviously descend right now. Coming up on OEV 18 now. Set altitude 3,700.
Altitude 3,700. Set.
Flaps 5.
Flaps 5.
Now remember, Innsbruck is over here. It's down here and turn right. You can see one of the flashing lights right now. We're actually going to go past it and turn back and come down, come around to runway 8. Just looking at my speed right there. Waiting for that to bleed off. I'm going to arm the speed brake properly.
Yes. Okay, thanks. Captain, the cabin secure.
Thank you. Flaps 15.
Flaps 15.
Gear down.
Gear down.
Set heading 230. set some FSX settings. Let's just pop this open once again. We're about 5 miles away from AB, where we're going to start our turn towards the Innsbruck NDB, which is over there. Then we have to be very careful with the timing of the turn there to go this way, so we don't collide with this mountain, which is always a little bit risky. Just make sure that speed brake is still on, which it's not. There it is. Alright, coming up on AB now. Frame rate's looking good. Select heading select.
Heading select.
Alright, now we need to turn before, slightly before the Innsbruck NDB. And we'll be looking out the window at this point to see when is a good place to turn. If you get it too early, then you come out of the turn onto runway 8 too far to the right here. If you turn too late, you collide with this hill.
Transition altitude. Altimeter is 1013.
Set. There's runway 26.
Approaching minimums.
Coming up on Innsbruck now, 2.5 miles. I'll be going right about there. Set heading 264.
Terrain. Heading 264. Set.
Final approach fix.
3673 feet.
Landing checklist.
Engine start switches.
Continuous.
Check. Speed brake.
Armed.
Landing gear.
Down.
Flaps.
Flaps 40.
Flaps 40.
Waiting to intercept now. This is 3.5 nautical mile circle around the NDB. That's where we're going to turn. And obviously the autopilot will be off. This will be a manual landing onto runway 8.
Terrain. Pull up. Caution. Terrain. Terrain. Pull up.
There we go. We'll try to hold 1,000 feet vertical speed. Oh, more power, more power.
Terrain, terrain. Pull up.
Localized deviation.
Obviously, FS the crew gets a little concerned at this point. They weren't expecting this by a long shot. Visibility onto the runway is terrible. I'm in the wrong seat for that. And unfortunately, FS the crew doesn't give you readouts. There it is. And I'm going to be off.
Terrain, terrain. Pull up.
Alright, I'm going to stop talking to you guys and focus on this landing. Check. Landing.
Check.
Okay to clean up.
Check.
Alright, a little bumpy. Any landing you can walk away from. They never claim to be an expert on the 737 MGX. Too much brakes. A little bit too much brakes. Very unprofessional.
Thank you for flying with us today, and we appreciate your business. We will hope to see you again on a future flight.
And there's that tunnel.
Thank you and goodbye.
I'm not going to do the full shutdown. I'm going to go get myself a stiff drink right now. I hope you enjoyed that. It is a very challenging approach. It's the Lock DME runway 8 approach at Innsbruck. As you've seen, it's crazy hard. It was a bumpy landing. It wasn't in any way pretty, but we are down. And to be honest, I've experienced worse than a real aircraft at this airport, so I'm not too upset by that. Thank you for watching. As always, my name is Frugal. See you soon.